about you every day. Try so hard to live without, but no mas. Sunshine is shining far away. Bird's eyes is looking out, and they can see that you're mine. 'Cause when we're together, you.
Hello. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining in for the Design Dash on Education, SDG 4. So, in order to conduct the Design Dash, we actually need to work in groups. So I would like to invite everyone that is sitting in the very end of the room to come closer to the stage and group yourselves with others, up to 4 people, if possible. So we have 2 people already here in the front, 2 people there. They're already forming a team, I guess. Or are you guys about to leave? No. So everyone who wants to participate in the Design Dash, please come forward a little bit. And then sit together in teams of 3. So we have a team forming here.
Are you guys in the back end?
OK, there's a team there. But you're participating, right? Perfect, yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent size of a group. Are you girls going to participate in? Yeah? Yeah? OK,
Great.
There's another team there. OK, great. So we have 2 teams. Perfect. All right. So we're going to start the Design Dash on the SDG 4 of education. So for the first session, we would like you to quickly think about 3 things that you associate with the topic of education. It can be a pain point that you see. It can be something that comes up to your mind right away. It doesn't matter. Note those 3 points down on a piece of paper or on your phone and share them within the next 3 minutes with your teams. Introduce yourselves to each other by using those 3 points that you wrote down in terms of education. We have 2 rules for the Design Dash. Number 1, please let everyone finish their sentences when they speak. Number 2, we don't ask why for this first session. We just ask and. As said, you have 3 minutes to introduce yourself and come up with some ideas about the topic. SDG number 4. There you go. Okay, time is up.
So now that all of you have, I suppose, introduced each other, so, well, now that you guys have introduced each other, now it's up to one person within your respective group to leave your group and switch pretty much group, one designated person within your group.
One person.
To one person.
So there's already a volunteer who's going to join this
Yes.
group, and we also need someone from your group to join another group.
It's like a trade in sports, you know, you switch teams. Was machen wir noch?
Und jetzt musst du es anleiten, wie sie es machen sollen.
Also was du sagen soll.
Soll ich weiter?
Yeah.
Okay, so the people who just joined the new teams are now being interviewed regarding the topic that you chose. So from the topics that you discussed in your teams, you just choose one that you find most interesting and interview the person who just joined your team, what he or she thinks about it, and gather thoughts on that. So you have 7 minutes to do so, starting now. So interviewees, please return to your original groups. And when back in the group, the remaining group members, please brief your returning team member on what you just discussed. And try to design your hypotheses. So the aim of this session will be to identify the problem and try to come up with a hypothesis. You again have 7 minutes for that, starting now. Time's up. So now I hope that you all came up with an hypothesis of your problem. So the next step is to actually develop a prototype. So we invite you to take 5 minutes to draw down possible solutions to the problem that you have defined. It can be multiple. You don't have to decide on one. That will be the next step. But just do different drafts of your solution for the SDG 4. You have 5 minutes from now. Now that you drew some ideas of what the solution to your problem might be, the next step is to actually build a prototype. So we want you to bring your idea to life. You can use the paper that we distributed. You can draw something on it. You can also use the chair, but please be careful not to hurt yourself or anyone else. And you have 10 minutes to build your prototype. Starting now.
It can be anything from a drawing to moving chairs, whatever is at your disposal.
right. So, interviewees from each group. So, you, I think, went to the other group and vice versa. Please return to the respective groups. And let them show you the prototype that they built. Try to give them feedback on what could be improved. And you also have 7 minutes for that. Starting now. Achso, oder die haben es. Ja, alles gut. Ja. Okay, interviewees, please return to your groups. And then individual teams, please continue to integrate the feedback that you received into your prototype and try to improve it. You have 7 more minutes for that before we share the results with the other teams. Yeah. Thank you. So guys, you have 2 more minutes for your prototype, and you will actually have an audience to look at it. So guys, I hope you all came up with a nice prototype. We're going to start with the group in the back. Please share with us the main idea of your prototype in like 30 seconds. Try to be precise as possible.
You look like a leader, though. Okay, you the expert? Are you the expert?
Okay, so go.
Okay,
You have been going in.
Go to her. I think so. So what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to describe your prototype, what you guys came up with. Okay.
So our hypothesis was that quality education, in order to achieve quality education, we needed an independent body which came up with an education plan which could not be influenced or interfered by government. So we came up with a framework. Our prototype was a framework where we had an independent body which was set up by a government agency, and given the powers to come up with a national education policy with an oversight team and then monitoring and evaluation team to ensure that whatever interventions have been come up with are actually achieving the impact that we wanted to, with all of the relevant stakeholders being considered in drawing up such a policy. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, and yeah. Second team.
we identified the problem of cooperation between the public-private sector and the academia as the one that is crucial for giving the skills to the students. And we are also concerned a bit about all of these institutions not hearing the voice of the students previously. So we are thinking about developing a model where there will be cooperation. The companies will foresee what are the skills needed. The academia should give the skills such as design thinking, critical thinking, and learnability, so the ability how to learn to further adjust due to the trends such as agile working, etc., to the students. And the government should be the one that will be pushing this kind of reforms into implementation, especially given the time frame when one government comes, implements, introduces a reform, and then if there is an election and is being replaced by another government, that the continuity is ensured for these reforms to be implemented.
Awesome. Thank you very much for participating. I hope you had some great insights. And we invite you to continue those discussions over lunch. We'll be taking a 1-hour break now. 30? Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. We're not taking a break, so please stay here. Damien is going to continue. So we invite you all to stay and listen to the next impulse talk that we have.
All right. Fantastic. Do you have the clicker? All right. So welcome to the last impulse session of the Hack for Cause. We fully realize that we are withholding you from lunch. So we even more appreciate your time staying here with us, and we're going to have then lunch in around 40 minutes. We'll warmly welcome you to stay with us here. So let me just start off with a brief introduction. Javad, if I could ask you to respectfully have a seat. Thank you. So let me just briefly introduce you to the Global Shapers community, which is basically hosting you here for the last 1.5 days. And we're going to have after lunch our final panel discussion. So I see a couple of familiar faces up in the front, but for the rest of you who are not familiar with the Global Shapers community, we are basically a network of people below the age of 30 committed to improving the state of the world. And how do we do this? We are around 8,500 people concentrated, focused around hubs. So basically in every single larger city across the globe, we have a hub. And if you research later on and there is another hub in your city, let us know. We make sure that at some point in time we're going to open a hub there to really include the people who are driving the future of our planet and represent the voice of the youth. Now, when we talk about shaping the world, we obviously have to think about shaping ourselves first. And that's precisely the journey I personally went through. So, by education and experience, I'm a banker. So many of you would put me in the dark side in the box saying, well, they're bankers, are basically people who are selfish and don't think around helping others, etc. And for sure, if you look at the financial crisis and others, you might have 1 or 2 valid points. Now, I was then asking myself the question. I'm talking about in the magic time with the Global Shapers community about having impact and supporting others. So I was asking them myself, right, that's the magic time. So what do you do in your normal 9-to-5 job? What is the impact your company has got? Well, questionable. What is the impact the companies you give millions over millions? I've did a couple of loans with several hundreds of millions for the companies. What do they do with the money they get? What's their impact? Well, question mark behind that as well. So then I asked myself, what is my personal impact? And I can tell you, it was quite small. So I totally changed my career. I still am a banker, but I've focused now on a totally different topic. And I focus on entrepreneurs, try to support them in becoming more successful, or successful even quicker. So this is precisely the reason why we are here in the room today, to think a little bit around the future of finance, how you can approach things, but then also share with you learnings we had as a community in respect of financing our initiatives, as well as the more than 35 years my institution has got in supporting entrepreneurs to accelerate growth. And this is what we are going to go through the next couple of minutes before lunch. So you certainly all have seen that slide over here. Is there anyone who does not know that concept? So it's great to see that everyone knows this. So it's in quite simple terms. When we talk about corporates, we basically very far down at the maturity stage, right? And for bankers, super simple. We see, my first question is, when do I get my money back? With interest. That's the number one thing as a banker you focus on, right? So for mature companies like Tamkeen or any of the sponsors who support us here, it's quite simple. You can see it very clearly when you'll get your money back. But now, if we go through those different stages through, it's quite tricky, right? So we heard Robin today in the morning that if you look at corporates and startups, it's basically, at the end of the day, these are all entrepreneurs. They're facing different challenges, but you have to be an entrepreneur to accelerate the growth of your company, of your career, or whatever we're talking about. So when you start from the totally different opposite, and we look at the idea to MVP layer, basically, that's something where you have your challenge already, you found your challenges, you want to solve them, you found the problems, basically, and now you're trying to refine, how do I solve that problem, and how do I actually, hopefully, make money out of that? And along that side, you might change a couple of times, right? So it's extremely interesting, and we've been chatting just briefly before we started here. The mindset there is extremely different to what you would have at the maturity stage. And through this, when you look at financing, it's obviously also a totally different mindset you have to have as a financier. So you cannot have the same standard when you have a corporate. You can look at the balance sheet. And I tell you, when I started my new job, I think the balance sheets I received, there were zeros missing. So I was asking, like, what are the units here of that balance sheet? Because suddenly, from like millions and billions, I was looking at several thousands. So you really have to understand the mindset you would have in those early stages, up then to changing and then scaling up. So for a banker, when we hear, well, you know, we might change the product, we might change the team, we might go into a different geography. A banker would say, hey, hold on a second. No, I want you to repay my loan at a certain time with interest. So how do you combine those two words? There are many different approaches towards that. Now, I won't go into too many details of the different ways you could get financing at the beginning, but we all know that you have a lot of opportunities and potentials, depending also on your ecosystem. So at the very early stage, when you are still developing and thinking of your startup and trying to develop it, who are usually the first ones to support you with financing? What's that? The 3 F's, right? Friends, family, and fools. Before that, perhaps you might have some change in your pocket as well, but this won't tell you or won't give you a lot of runway, right? So you have to rely on other people as well. And then you go through, you might have some seed investors, depending on your business as well. You might have some impact investors, etc. But at the end of the day, you're relying on investors supporting you. And then you go through the different stages and go ahead, whether you then raise the first seed round and then proper Series A, B, C, D, whatever rounds are coming in, every single time you have someone else supporting you, believing in your vision, in your team, and the solutions we want to provide, and then accelerate growth. Now, accelerate growth might also be in terms of impact, right? We are talking about the SDGs for the last 1.5 days. You know, everyone defines it differently, and I see a couple of new faces, so we won't go into the different definitions and the context, right? But this is still the same, at the end of the day, this is still the same mindset you have to have, right? And I come to that in a second, but the question then is, if you are raising those rounds of financing, how can you also extend the runway then when you get the VCs investing into you? And that's something where there are banks and institutions which can support you also extending runway without only giving up equity for the stakes you have in your companies. So there are various ways of approaching this, but let us focus with you for a second on the learnings when you want to go through those stages and go up to an exit where you have an IPO or trade sale to a corporate, which we traditionally refer to as an exit. So all across those stages we have different challenges, but there are a lot of learnings we've done. Also when we look at it from a social initiative perspective or a social startup, which we with the Global Shapers are focusing on and oftentimes advise on in Frankfurt, but also in other regions across the globe. Or also for startups which are purely looking at venture capital to growth and then go through those different life stages. So when you go and try to raise capital or try to find support, you always need someone to believe in your vision. And through that, you need to have a baseline partner. So this might be the 3 Fs at the beginning, and then trying to find more. This is someone believing in your vision and trying to get you to the next stage. And sometimes you don't even know about it, but in the background, he'll be telling other people that, whoa, what that person is doing is freaking incredible. And we have to support him through introductions, through other means of support. So finding a baseline partner is extremely important. Then, cash is not only the only thing you can receive from your partners, right? So what we oftentimes do with the Global Shapers, and this applies again also to startups, is thinking of what do we actually want to achieve and how do we get there? And what means do we need to get there? So people might think of locations of food or whatever, or services. But at the end of the day, it's not always cash you need to get something done. And then obviously, we always say, and that's the title of the next panel, there's no competition in making the world a better place. So if we have a project which is focusing on empowering underprivileged youth, well, are we the only ones in Frankfurt or in the region or in the country or globally focusing on that? Obviously not. So there are a lot of different partners you can partner up with and see how we can cooperate. And again, this also applies to startups. Right? So there are a lot of business models which can work together without actually and having the same cause and not thinking at the first moment about competition. Now, I don't have to tell that into this, in this room, because we are also here and supported in Bahrain in an extremely professional manner. But that's obviously if you are a social enterprise and you're focusing on getting cash, finding partners, getting some other support, being professional is number 1. And this is why we also have Robin as a master of slides, because our slides are always neatly put together so we can present a very professional face every single time, wherever we speak, whatever we do. And then selling. Every single thing you do, you have to sell. You have to imagine that if you are somewhere and talking about the impact you want to have, you basically are selling it. So tell your story accordingly as well. And then this is again playing into not being afraid of asking. So when we are putting together a pitch deck to try to get some partner, we just recently discussed to get the city of Frankfurt supporting us in an initiative where we basically put together all initiatives in Frankfurt where you can dedicate your magic time to. So we want the city of Frankfurt supporting us in doing this. Now, if we have all those lessons done right, we still have to say, well, I want you to help me with this. They might not fulfill it 100%, but obviously, they're going to think of ways to try to support you in getting there. And then this plays also into piggybacking. Maybe the city might have already a solution for something we are already working on. So why don't we support or use their network and help them also having more impact? Because at the end of the day, it's not us putting the logo on something. At the end of the day, it's the impact we want to achieve. So piggybacking is something which, especially as a social enterprise or an initiative which you do in your magic time, is extremely valuable. And then talk about your impact. Now, I'm not a person which loves to be on social media and present selfies, etc. But we do those to then being able also to, again, sell, but also talk about the impact you achieve. The pictures always speak a different language than plain numbers. So showcase the impact of the things you do, and I guarantee you will have a lot of backers, supporters, and funders to helping you accelerate the growth of your social enterprise or of your startup. And that's clear, right? If you have an opportunity, you see in front of you a problem and you want to change it, you really are focusing on helping the persons and then supporting them going forward. And then once you have all those things put together, you can speak with broad shoulders, because you're going to see that in a second. Laura is the head of our coding school in Frankfurt. We are very confident that what we've done to the children, they're super excited about, and at the end of the day, our biggest advocates. So we're going to show you in a second how we approach those different steps as well. So you really know what you can provide through having the skills and the right people in the room and the right people supporting that larger vision. So knowing what you're worth, knowing the strength of your startup, of the respective people in the startup there, presenting it in a cohesive manner, may it be social enterprise or initiative as we do, or then raising proper venture capital dollars like Chris just recently did, is something which is extremely valuable. And let us now show you how we approached this just recently. So I just mentioned that Laura is heading our coding school for underprivileged youth. So how do we approach that in Frankfurt? So at the middle, we put the impact we want to achieve. And you might be aware that over the last years, we had in Germany something which was called the refugee crisis. So at the end of the day, we had a lot of guests in Frankfurt, and we hope they're going to stay for much, much longer. Now, the issue with that is that many of those came without their parents. So we have a lot of refugee kids, and they are there to stay. And the German education system puts them in a very niche category and leads them basically towards physical work for the society. So our aim here was really expanding the horizons of the refugee kids, telling them, well, if you want to go that path and you are talented for that, that's absolutely fine. But there are other opportunities for you and for the people around you which you can access here, and this was something we wanted to achieve here. So we did an impact map. We put the impact in the middle and saw which other stakeholders could support us in our mission to achieve that impact. And we mapped a couple of them out. Obviously, that map was humongous. And every single of those stakeholders then has, again, a map around them, which is then, again, humongous, because you have a lot of different players, obviously in an ecosystem which we are operating in. So just to make it a little bit more comprehensible, let's take the example of corporates. So Frankfurt is known for banking, corporates, and a local cider. So let's focus though on the airport, obviously. Now, when we look at the corporates, they are obviously extremely powerful. And when we talk about coding for refugees, they can provide a lot of different things. So obviously we were talking about cash before, but that's by far not the only way they could support us. So we are talking with the corporates and supporting us with skills of the employees, with mentoring. We needed also locations, food, etc. So we are mapping this out, what those corporates could give to us. And then again, we then looked at hardware, at batering, to see what else they could provide us with. So we went deeper then in the conversations with those different stakeholders to further understand what they could support our initiative with, so we can get the final impact we wanted to have. And what was the outcome of that? We found 16 extremely inspiring young persons which came to us, or which we had that session with. We were able to give them a day's length of coding skills. And now we did a major mistake. We did not realize that coding for them means how to type and start doing very basic steps we just took for granted. So what we wanted to help them with is creating a web page. That was not 100% the right match, but it went to the right direction. So in 2 months, we're having the next step where we're basically going 2 steps back and giving them the basic of the skills, which they can then enable them to work on their own web pages. So I'm extremely proud that Laura was heading this initiative and kicking that off. But what we then were able to do is not only getting the right financing to support those kids then with some presents and laptops, we then received also donations in kind to give even more laptops to the kids so they can practice the skills we want to teach them. But it also gave them a lot of time and open horizons in the sense of giving them something which they have never received before. So the mentors of that coding school from our partners' perspective said that those kids have never before seen a location which we could provide them with. They've never gotten any presence from the community around Frankfurt. And also, they never had someone sitting down with them and talking about the visions and where they want to go. So I'm extremely proud of this. I just wanted to share that with you. Now, that is how we use the impact map to go through those lessons we have shown you before. Step by step, we could go through those within the impact map and then get the network and the ecosystem in Frankfurt to support us in receiving that or creating that impact for those children. So if you have researched in the meantime whether you have a hub of the Global Shapers around you and there is none, or you want us to connect you with the hub there locally, please reach out to us. I know that we are holding you back from lunch, so I will wrap it up now. We warmly invite you for our session and after lunch, where we'll have a panel discussion focusing on building bridges. That we don't accept that there's competition in making the world a better place. So please join us after lunch for the final panel of the Hack for Cause. Thank you very much. Right. Lunch. Yeah. 2 hours.